Hi, this is Christy. Today we are going to work on word problems involving proportions. I'm going to be referring to my Solving Math Word Problems checklist as we go. Step number 1, understand the problem. Read and reread, visualize or draw. The office supply store sells 3 reams of colored printer paper for every 13 reams of white printer paper. If the store sells 91 reams of white printer paper on a given Saturday, how many reams of colored printer paper would you expect them to sell? This time as I reread, I'll make note of any important numbers and units. The office supply store sells 3 reams, I'm guessing reams is a unit, of colored printer paper for every 13 reams of white printer paper. If the store sells 91 reams of white printer paper on a given Saturday, how many reams of colored printer paper would you expect them to sell? Now at this point I don't know what a ream is, but I do know that the store is selling paper, right? Colored printer paper and white printer paper. And I don't really know too much more. Let's see, 3 reams are going to be colored and 13 are going to be white. And that's what they typically sell, 3 reams of color printer paper for every 13 reams of white printer paper. Now, this is kind of like a hypothetical situation. If the store sells 91 reams of white printer paper, make this one white, 91 on a given Saturday, how many reams of colored printer paper would you expect them to sell? There we go. So the store usually sells 3 reams of color and 13 reams of white. That's the ratio or the proportion that they sell their paper in. On a given Saturday, how many reams of color printer paper would you expect them to sell if they sold 91 reams of white? Okay, before we go any farther, you can see on the checklist it says look up unknown words. What exactly is a ream? And I did look that up for you. And I printed out a picture. This is a ream of paper. It is one of these green packs. Those of you who work in an office probably already know this, but a ream is 500 sheets of paper. So that might help us as we are visualizing this problem. Now, back to our checklist. Determine what the question is asking you to find and make sure you have enough information or maybe even extra information sometimes. All right, the store is asking us to find how many, that's going to be a number, reams of colored printer paper would you expect them to sell? That's what we're trying to find out. This is going to be a number. I think we have everything that we need. We have 3 numbers and a proportion is made up of 4 numbers. So I think we'll have to find that 4th number. Step 2, make a plan to solve the problem. Come up with a strategy and estimate the answer. Well, I know that we're working with proportions today. So my plan is going to be set up a proportion. That's going to have 2 equal ratios. Step 2, I'm going to be solving for a number. Solve for the missing number. And that's it. So let's try and get a quick estimate. Let's see, 3 is about a quarter of 13. A little bit less than a quarter, because a quarter is 4. 3 times 4 would be 12. So let's figure out that my colored paper should be about a quarter of 90. Let's see, what's a quarter of 90? How many times does 4 go into 90? 4 times 2 is 8. So subtract. Bring your 0 down. How many times does 4 go into 10? 2 times completely. 2 times 4 is 8. 10 minus 8 is 2. 0 down. 4 goes into 25 times. So, the color paper should be approximately 22.5. That's going to be the estimate that we'll be working with. It looks like they sell about 1/4 color reams for white reams. Estimate. Okay, let's move on. Solve the problem. Write out all work neatly, make several attempts to solve the problem, don't give up, and double check your math. We said step number 1 was to set up the proportion. The proportion is going to have 2 sides to it. On one side, it's going to be the ratio that you know. It's either going to be this one or this one. Well, this has a question mark, so let's work with this one. And it doesn't really matter which we put first. The 3 could go on the top or the 13 could go on the top, but we have to keep track of our units. That's the key. Let's do 3 reams color for every 13 reams of white paper. That's the ratio that I know. The second part of a proportion is another ratio. And with word problems, you're going to have an unknown value. And our unknown value here is the color. We don't know. We don't know how many reams of color they sold on a Saturday. We do know 91 reams of white. And this is a proportion. Let's simplify it just a little bit by eliminating some of the words. We know that we've already kept track of our units. We have reams of color on the top, reams of color on the top, reams of white on the bottom, reams of white on the bottom. They have to match like that. Now, if I was to write it out using just math, it would look like this. 3 over 13 equals, and mathematicians use an N, which stands for number, unknown number, N over 91. That's what we're going to be solving for. So that was step 1. We set up the proportion. Step 2, solve for the missing number. Okay, this is really the trick to proportions. How do you solve for that missing number? Well, you can do algebra if you know algebra. If not, let's go ahead and do a little shortcut. When you are solving, you need to cross multiply. Cross looks like this. It's an X. You are going to multiply the numbers that form the X right here. 3 by 91. That's how we start. 3 times 91 is the first step. Let's do that together. 91 times 3. 1 times 3 is 3. 9 times 3 is 27. So we have 273. The second part of the X here we have to work with now. But look, we don't know what the N is, so I really can't multiply that right now. The next part here, you get to divide by whatever the number is that you have. And I do have a 13 there. So I'm going to divide by 13. How many times does 13 go into 273? Let's do some division. 13 goes into 27, probably 2 times. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 1 is 2. Now you subtract. 27 minus 26 is 1. Carry the 3 down. How many times does 13 go into 13? 1. And you subtract. Okay. 273 divided by 13 is 21. We're actually done. That is the answer. So, to solve a proportion, you set up the proportion, then you have to work with an X shape. The first line of the X, you multiply the 2 numbers that you know. The second line of the X, you divide by the lonely one, okay? That's how you solve a proportion quickly. All right, let's go back to our solving math word problem checklist. We wrote on our work, we didn't give up, we did not double check our math, so why don't we just do that real quick. Oops, and I see I have an error on my calculator. I'll have to figure that out later. We'll just do it by hand. 91 times 3. 1 times 3 is 3. 9 times 3 is 27. Correct. All right, now 273 divided by 13. 13 goes into 27 2 times. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 1 is 2. And then you subtract. 7 minus 6 is 1. Bring your 3 down. You have a 13. 13 goes into 13 1 time. You subtract and you're left with 0. Double check. Good. Step 4. Reflect on the problem. Did you answer the question, and is your answer close to the estimate? Well, the estimate that we have up here, 22.5, is very close to 21, so I'm thinking we might be right here. The question asked us, if the store sells 91 reams of white printer paper on a given Saturday, how many reams of colored printer paper would you expect them to sell? And we got 21, which is about a quarter of 91. So I think that's close. Great job.